Welcome to the Therapists Talk Money podcast, the place for therapists and key figures in our profession to talk openly and think analytically about money. What brought me to this conversation today is an advert for university courses in psychotherapy that came out yesterday. And I'm absolutely certain that the university have put it out in excellent good faith. But it really raised some confusion for me about where SCoPEd is, how it's being implemented, what the sort of process of it through the PSA regulatory system might be, the consultation around SCoPEd. It's, this really exemplifies how complicated any kind of regulation is. And SCoPEd's been going for 5 years now.
I think 6 since 2018.
Right. And there's no one from the original team that began the SCoPEd process is there anymore. Is that right?
I think definitely from BSCP. I think possibly UKCP. I'm less sure about BPC because they're very quiet about the whole thing anyway. But yeah, BSCP. I think Fiona ran a lot of it from BSCP, and she's not there anymore. So yeah.
And what was the other thing about it? Oh, scope creep. It's interesting. There's scope creep. When a project starts and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a project management thing where a project has to be managed in such a focused way, or else it just turns into ruling the world really badly. And it feels as if quite a bit of creep has happened here. So where are we? What's happening?
Yeah. I think what I'm picking up and what I'm seeing online is, in terms of where are we, I think people are just a bit like, what on earth is going on? It just feels like one big mess to a lot of people, and there is so much confusion between therapists as well about lots of different aspects of the scope framework, really, kind of where they stand in it, how they move across columns, what it means for their existing jobs, their future jobs. Do they need to retrain for certain parts if they want to move across the framework? It's raising concerns around inequality, within the profession. So there's lots of conversations happening, especially on Facebook and on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. But there just seems to be a lot of confusion. The advertisement that you mentioned yesterday, that we seen yesterday about the UK university mapping their training onto the scope framework caused a lot of questions, I guess, to arise for people, just about how that works, and questions around people having the ability to do that. Are they kind of checked off when they're doing that? Does somebody oversee that process? Yeah, there's a lot of questions that have come up. I think for me, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about SCoPEd today, is it SCoPEd or SCoPEd Ed, Claire?
Who cares? You can call it Jeremy for all I care. You know what we're talking about.
It's called. I'm going to say SCoPEd because I've been saying that for years. One of the things that I wanted to mention today, which ties in with that advertisement that was released yesterday, because it's raised a lot of questions as well, is that the PSA, the Professional Standards Authority, are in the process of asking for submissions. They are carrying out a consultation, and anyone can submit a response. They want to hear from counsellors and psychotherapists, different organisations, about their views around the scope framework. So I've already submitted a response on behalf of CTUK with Dr. Elizabeth Cotton from Survive and Work. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I would urge other people to respond as well. The deadline is Friday the 17th of May. and I'll put the
So we've
email
got time.
address either on this screen or below the screen so people can email them. But it is as easy as just emailing them with your either your concerns or your thoughts. If you don't have any concerns, you can, whatever your kind of thoughts, feelings are, it's important to send them across, I feel. So Elizabeth and I submitted our response to that consultation last week. And what we focused on was because Survive and Work has already done some research for CTUK about SCoPEd since 2018 to now, and we've done two studies. We've done one in 2021 and one in 2023 as well, and we did look at therapists' thoughts and views on SCoPEd within those pieces of research. So I thought it would be worth mentioning a few of the key findings from that, and we can discuss how that fits with the advertisement that we've seen yesterday. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, of course.
So we, in our two pieces of research, in the first one that we done in 2021, it was 1,500 respondents, and then in 23 we had 750 respondents, and we asked a lot of different questions about the more kind of general financial landscape of counselling and psychotherapy in the UK, but we looked at a section on SCoPEd as well. We had a section on SCoPEd, and we also looked at the cost of living crisis as well. So our 5 key concerns which came out of those pieces of research were about the financial unsustainability of counsellors and psychotherapists. We knew that 65% of therapists earn less than £600 a week. And
yeah, 65%.
Yeah, 65%, less than £600 a week. 18% are currently working unwaged. 49% are worried about covering their cost of living last year. 42% had increased their therapy workload to cover increased cost of living. 59% of respondents earned their main income in counselling and psychotherapy, but 23% of respondents had to work outside of counselling and psychotherapy to cover their costs. 55% in 2021 went into debt while training, and 36% whilst working.
Really?
Yeah, and 16% in 23 and 14% in 21 of respondents received an income-based welfare benefit, with 4% of therapists accessing food banks while training and 3% accessing food banks whilst working. But this is the bit that really stood out for me, and this is the bit that is in direct relation to SCoPEd, was only 3% of the 2023 survey respondents felt that SCoPEd offered them high opportunities of paid work, and 1% felt it would lead to an income increase, rising to 13% responding that they anticipated a fall in income because of the SCoPEd framework. As a result of these financial realities, a high level, it was 33% of respondents couldn't see a future earning a living as a counsellor or a psychotherapist, sorry. So that was our first key kind of area of concern. The second key area of concern that we had was around the deepening inequalities in the sector. And we know that in counselling and psychotherapy, we have quite a high percentage of disabled people.
Yeah, it's higher than the national average, isn't it?
So in our profession, it was 38%. The national average is 18%.
Right, right.
We know that there's more women work in the sector than men. But what we felt was that, what respondents told us that the respondents had a view on SCoPEd. 10% felt that they would fail to get accredited under the new system. 19% felt it would lead to lower diversity within the profession. Only 1% felt SCoPEd would lead to higher diversity.
That's entirely logical.
Mm. And what people were talking about in the comments of the survey was about the flaws between what column C therapists are deemed competent to practice
Mm,
in comparison to column A therapists or column B therapists. And in
mm,
some cases, column A therapists being told that they're not competent at all in the areas that column C therapists are. And so, for example, it it in the SCoPEd framework, it says that therapists from column C can work with the unconscious, but not therapists from column A. So it's, yeah. I mean,
I mean, that is staggering.
I as a therapist find that insulting. Like I will just say that like that.
Yeah.
It's insulting.
What on earth is therapy? And what about those models that don't really recognize the conception of unconscious at all? That's so,
Yeah, yeah,
well, that's really strange.
yeah, yeah.
So
So
structurally, if I can get from unqualified to column C in about 7 years, if I go for it.
yeah, you could get from qualification, you would
Maybe a bit longer.
to column B when you were accredited. This only applies to BSCP though, not the other membership bodies. So this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. So
Right.
you would need to qualify, be registered with BSCP, and then work for 3 years minimum before you can apply for your accreditation. And you'd have to meet all the guidelines and whatever for that. You would then, once you were qualified, be moved into column B. You'd be a column B therapist. I don't know, like I'm going to be really honest, what the criteria is to move from column B to column C. I think column C is at least having a master's, a level 7 or above qualification, and then meeting the criteria for the higher levels of accreditation, so the senior accredited,
Senior accredited.
yeah,
Yeah.
as well. So, but I'm not sure the exact requirements from B to C.
And BACP are the arbiters of accreditation and senior accreditation. You can't get it through the university. That's right.
Yes, which is why, well, one of the reasons there was a lot of confusion about some of the advertisements that have been coming out from different training establishments. So what we're seeing now is, and this isn't just in reference to the one that we seen yesterday, because there's others who well, but training establishments are already starting to say, our training is aligned to column A or column B or column C of the SCoPEd framework. Yeah. And so where the confusion lies is if a training establishment is saying that their training is aligned to column B, so say they're running a master's program and they say this aligns to column B if the SCoPEd framework, which is for accredited therapists within BSCP, the therapist who is training won't be able to complete their training and then move straight into column B with BSCP because they won't have been through BSCP's own accreditation process. They'll still need to have been 3 years post qualification, have the hours and all the other criteria. They might, if they have already trained, so they've done a diploma in counselling and they've been working for years as therapists and they've done a master's as a top up, be able to go into column B. But then they wouldn't need the masters to be in that column anyway. So
That's right.
why is that? Why would the training establishment advertise that if the counsellor would already be eligible to meet that accreditation anyway? So these are the kind of questions that people were asking. And the questions were, if different training establishments can write their courses in line with the SCoPEd framework or say that they are, who is monitoring this? Is someone from one of the 6 membership bodies who has signed up to be a member of it, to partake in the SCoPEd framework? Is someone from one of their membership bodies checking all these courses and saying yes it does or no it doesn't?
Yeah.
it seems to me, when SCoPEd was first kind of introduced as an idea back in 2018, and we were always told that SCoPEd was primarily an exercise to map training and
That's right. It was a mapping exercise, wasn't it?
the UK. And already, like, their main reason for doing SCoPEd, like, that's an impossible task. Like, how do you do that? There are
Mm.
so many people, you know, courses even between different departments vary sometimes. You have colleges running them, universities running them. You have this in CTUK, I know at least 5 people off the top of my head who run their own private training
Indeed.
companies. That there's hundreds, if not thousands, out there. If you go,
Mm.
if you look at people train as well, outside of the UK and things, and then come in and do bits of top ups to meet requirements to join membership bodies here. And you've always been able to kind of have, you know, to do that. But now what's become confusing is, how have they mapped this? I still haven't seen anything
Well,
which
it's this
was
is the this
mapped.
is the creep. It's moved from being a mapping exercise to being a semi-regulatory curriculum-led qualification standards project
Mm,
without anyone realizing. And the this, I don't know that this is true, but the feel that I get is that colleges and universities are trying to look 5 years ahead. They're trying to plan,
mm,
and they're looking at this bloody scoped thing, and they're having to interpret it
mhm, mhm,
to make financial plans to stay alive. They
mm,
can't just wait for
mm,
whatever it is to happen. They're having to say, this is what we're offering. I mean, that's its own issue. But and my fear is that we're just going to bumble through this, that it's, oh, don't worry about it. We'll just add something here and take something off there, rather than going, what the hell? We need to do a mapping exercise of SCoPEd, really. What's happened and why does it happen? And, what the hell are we doing?
yeah.
Define some terms.
Well, I think, what
But
the hell are we doing? That's what therapists are saying at the minute. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, people are more
because
confused
it's,
after the election.
I'd hate to this to go to law, but it may be the only way that it's ever sorted out. Somebody pays several £1,000s and they have to take a university to court to say, they said I'd get this and I haven't got that, but I've blown, I don't know, 30K
Mhm,
and not got what was advertised.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, that would be appalling.
It's I qualified as I started my counsellor training in 2021. No, 2001. Gosh, it was that long ago. 2001. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, which is caused so much just confusion and disruption.
Confusion.
And for me, I think one of the saddest things is that it's caused like a massive split in the profession between a lot of therapists as well. Some who are in column
Mm.
C and agree with it and want to be in column C, and others who are not and feel really discriminated against.
And it sort of embeds these inequalities. So you can be a very experienced therapist who is not concerned about gathering
Mm,
letters after your name, and you can be practicing uh, with excellence and be highly regarded and have written and published millions of books, but you're only allowed to be in column A.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I mean, the whole thing about the unconscious is just, that is such a, it's laughable, really. And
Mm.
the fact that it's still there, I mean, it is still there, isn't it? In column C, you can just about handle an unconscious.
Yeah, I think they use different words for column A and B, but it's still there, but the unconscious, as far as I'm aware.
Extraordinary.
Yeah, it's really one of the confusing things is so I have a degree which is a health degree, it's health studies. It's, you know, and then I done a diploma in counselling over 2 years at college, was registered with BSAP from that point. After that, I then done an MA in counselling and psychotherapy at the University of York, and that was in 2010 that I finished that. And I have worked all of those years as a counsellor, have had ongoing supervision, must have well over 10,000 clinical hours by now, easy. I've worked in different projects. I've set up and managed counselling services in charities for children and young people. I have worked in the NHS. I have set up, oh, that was, that was one that made me laugh. There's something in it about how only column C therapists, and this isn't the exact words, but it's related to this, can network and work across multidisciplinary teams. And he's me, column A therapist, running CTUK with over 10,000 members and setting up and coordinating National Counsellors Day. But
and agencies
I can't
specifically.
do that.
Yes, you haven't got the skill. We can't trust you with that.
Um,
And you've been doing it.
Yeah, so I could, so someone like me, for example, and there's lots of people who are much more qualified and experienced than I am as well, could be a member of BSAP, right, and be in column A because we choose not to be accredited. I've been accredited with BSAP in the past and I'm not anymore. And but I could choose to do accreditation, go through that process, which would mean I'd have to pay hundreds of pounds. I would have to pay for extra supervision because you need extra half-hour supervision a month. I would have to pay increased membership fees, meet all the extra criteria. So I could go through that process, move up to column B and beyond, possibly, if I'd done that. But I don't want to do that. And then someone can qualify with a diploma or a degree. They can work for 3 years. They can apply to be accredited, and they can go straight into column B.
Yeah.
Which I don't really care about in terms of my life or my private practice. The reason, the time when that will become problematic is for those therapists who want paid employment, and especially within the NHS, because we all know the NHS won't put column A counsellors into their band 5, which I think is equivalent to the accredited. They want accredited counsellors in the NHS. So you could have someone like me who could be a member of BSAP, be in column A, and someone in column B who would qualify to practice for 3 years would be eligible for a job that I wouldn't be eligible to apply for. But where it gets even more, this is just bonkers, I think. So I'm also a member of NCPS, and I can be in column C with NCPS, and I don't have to pay to get there, and I don't have to pay any increased membership fees or anything. So because NCPS have been really good, I think this has been a really good piece of work that NCPS have done, actually. And I think Meg, who was the old CEO, I think she really should have a lot of credit for doing this. But not that long ago, the NHS only recognised really BACP, UKCP, BPC counsellors. That's on the job advertisements. That's what they'd want. And Meg fought for a long time to get NCPS members recognised within the NHS and be able to apply for their jobs as well. So there's a job advertised in the NHS. They want a column B therapist. They accept BACP and NCPS applicants. I can apply because I'm column C. So I'm now above what I am. I'm now above the BACP applicants, where I'm column A in that organisation.
And that really, well, it exemplifies the issue, I think. It's not about safety. None of this is about client safety. None of it is about a career advancement at this stage, certainly. It's about status. And the fact that, the hoo-ha that was made about 6 professional organizations can sit in the same room and actually not fight. I mean, that's bizarre. They can manage the unconscious, but they can't manage not to argue with each other.
Yeah.
And then we've come all this way and they have differing standards.
Mhm. So they can't. So as far as we're aware, and we might not know if this is in place. And what I would say, if anybody is watching this video and they are from, if it is a membership body watching or whatever, please do correct us if we're
Yeah,
wrong.
please,
Um,
please.
in with BSEP, I would need to apply for accreditation to move up. With NCPS, I can move to column C already, and I don't have to pay any extra for that. So there isn't that consistency between any of the membership bodies who have signed up for this. Also, I'm not aware of anybody who is overseeing any training course using the framework to inform their training. What I do know is that when people join as registrants for the different membership bodies, they will have to meet a certain criteria. So they will have had to do so many hours and so many hours of training and clinical practice, and they will have to prove, if it's not a well-known or accredited training by that organisation, that the training course meets the criteria for registration. So that will be a check, I guess, when people start applying, or BACP, and I'm just thinking out loud here, this might not be happening, but how BACP done the certificate of proficiency, and people who do accredited BACP courses don't have to sit that, they can just automatically become a member.
Yeah.
Are universities going to start saying this is column B, and if you do this then you're automatically in column B? Is that why? We don't know. It's just, but this is what I mean about the confusion and the questions that it's raising for people. And one of the things, and I only thought about this morning, Claire, was I remember them going on about this so much, and it is in lots of the debate videos. We need the SCoPEd framework because it will stop all these voucher Groupon courses.
Oh, I know. Yes.
No, it won't. You already haven't even got control of people who's writing their courses within alignment with the framework now. Yeah. And they haven't been able to stop people so far saying, so some of these Groupon and voucher courses will say, complete our 12-week course for £10.99 or whatever, and you will be able to register as a counsellor in the UK. Yeah, they're still going to say that regardless of the SCoPEd framework or not. Yeah. And they might even start saying, this is an alignment.
They'll just change the language. They'll just say psychological worker or whatever it is. Yeah. The whole voucher thing is just ludicrous. It's the man. There are probably 2.5 people out there that practice for longer than, a week after they've got their £10 certificate. That, let's not think about that. We have lots of our own problems to worry about.
But I just think the fact that we can see courses popping up already saying we're in alignment with this, it does nothing. Anybody can say that.
Well, I mean, I think this is appropriate. There was that EAP that was exposed by the BBC a couple of weeks ago, and it's got some BACP backing. I think it's the only one that is accredited or something with the BACP, and its actual practice in some areas was lousy. We can have all the structure that we like around it, but actually what it comes down to is thoughtful, reflective, genuine, thoughtful, reflective practice. And people not going, oh, how can I make a buck? Oh, how can I make them? This is an opportunity. Not everything is a blooming opportunity. We have to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And SCoPEd, I got that a long time ago. It could offer a really useful career structure. This is how you move through the world, but it prices people out. It embeds inequality in a really disgusting manner. And the fact that they haven't thought about that is, I mean, it makes me kind of weep. There's hopelessness around this.
Actually, they can you remember, I think it was at the 2022 National Council Day Conference, and Dr. Emma Radville-Bright presented her alternative to the SCoPEd framework. And that was really well received, because I think what a lot of people think is that therapists are either anti-regulation or anti-competency framework, and actually not everyone is. A lot of people think it is a good idea to have a competency framework and to have minimum set standards and
Yeah,
possibly
yeah. I'm one
title.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and me too as well. Like, I'm not, people will say, and I've heard this, like Maria and CTUK is really anti-scoped.
Mm.
We are anti-scoped, but we're not anti-competency framework. There's a difference, and Emma, I'll double check with Emma, but Emma has said in the past that I can share her video. So I'll put a link below this one because it'd be really good for people to watch. And Emma is really highly qualified, really highly skilled. She worked within competency frameworks within the Anthony Nolan Trust for years. She's really senior, traveled all over the world, and that's what she done. And she presented a framework where she took the SCoPE framework and showed us how that can be put into practice in a way that doesn't discriminate against anyone. No one has to have increased costs, and shows how by using a traffic light system, it would be really easy to move across that framework into different columns, being monitored by your supervisor in your supervision, and it would give people the freedom to choose without being accredited. So what Emma said, if I remember correctly, but please do watch the video, was that if you were in column A, that's what you would be in. So it would be an equal playing field. You would qualify and you would be in column A. And then in column B, there might be like 3 different criteria that you'd have to meet. So you could say to your supervisor, right, I want to move up to column B. I'm going to put some effort into doing this. I need to meet these different criteria. What's the best way of doing that? And then you would do that. It might just be writing a paragraph or recording a short video of showing your supervisor that you can evidence that you are competent in that, whatever the criteria was. Your supervisor would then tick a box. You'd email that to BACP. They'd go, yeah, you've evidenced it. You're in column B. You can then do the same for column C. And there's no cost attributed to that. There's no like real hierarchy because it removes some of the barriers. I don't know if it removes all of them, but definitely from what I watched in that presentation, it removes a lot of them. You can do it in your own time. You're not paying any extra for supervision, ongoing fees, all the rest of it. And the thing is, like, you have control of that as well.
Yes.
But the bit for me is that this is a model that Emma was presenting that works, and it's used every
It's
day
already
by all of
used.
these organizations. And that
Yes.
made me wonder, was there anybody on the ERG group who had that level of experience or who had already written or worked within these competency frameworks? Because what Emma was presenting was, it captured everything that was in the SCoPE framework. She didn't leave anything out. It captured all of that, but it just put it in a way that was easy to understand. You could see how you could move across the columns with ease, and it just made total sense. And when Emma delivered that at National Cancer Day, it got a lot of positive feedback. There was a lot of therapists saying, like, I would sign up for that. That is much better. It's much easier. I would be able to afford to do that. I could do it in my own time. The pressure is removed as well, and that hierarchy, which is really important to me, that's removed as well.
Yes.
I asked membership bodies to have a look at this, and they didn't.
Nothing.
So,
Of course they didn't. Of course they didn't.
yeah. But it moves us on to like what we're talking about there, that the third key concern that Elizabeth and I submitted to the PSA was about the deprofessionalisation of therapy and how the SCoPE framework is going to actually enhance that, really. We've already talked about the NHS, how category A therapists are kind of gatekeepers out of the NHS. Unless we're doing voluntary work for one of their charities that's attached to them, then we're allowed to see NHS patients if we're not going to work and be paid.
Students are seeing NHS outpatients today.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to give a damn about that.
No, no. So you can work with NHS patients whilst you're training, but not when
you're qualified.
For some reason, between qualification and being qualified, you suddenly become incompetent.
Yeah.
You can't do that role. But I've just found the bit here. I'm looking through. I've got my phone here, and I'm looking through the submission that Elizabeth and I made. What we've written, I'll just read it to you, is through its formulation of the nature of the work undertaken in category A, the SCoPE framework stands to undermine further the professional standards within the sector. In section 4.9, it claims that a distinguishing characteristic of category C therapists is that only they and not category A or B therapists can use theory to conceptualize the unconscious in their work. So that was the unconscious bit as we're talking about. To remove the central principle within therapeutic work that we can conceptualize and therefore work with unconscious material undermines category A and category B therapist. Further, SCoPE's definition of category C therapists misunderstands the nature of therapy and the diversity of practice within the profession. It subsequently leaves category A and B in a regulatory grey zone about their work with unconscious material and therefore professionally unprotected. Given the rapid rise in association with non-clinical roles within the NHS talking therapies and more widely within the privatised and digitalised therapy sector, this fundamentally stands to undermine professional standards rather than protect them. The four key concern that came out of the research that Elizabeth done was how SCoPEd fails to address the future of the therapeutic professions. It what we've how we've summarized it to the PSA is we've said this, I'll just read it out. The counselling and psychotherapy employment landscape will continue to be shaped heavily by the emergence of digital services, including within the NHS, as well as the rapid growth of online therapy platforms and employment assistance programs. We can anticipate the emergence of large and new digital providers and online therapy platforms as key providers in the UK. So these might not necessarily be UK-based companies either. A lot of them at the minute are US-based, aren't they? So they are employing UK-based therapists and delivering therapy in the UK, and they're not aligned to the SCoPE framework at all.
No, it's the Wild West, and it's going to be that way for a long time.
Yeah, so we've put this platformization of work raises with it issues of work intensification, standardization, patient confidentiality, data protection, work surveillance, and how do we manage that really at an individual and professional level?
Good luck with that.
But none of that, the point that we're making in this response to the PSA is none of what I've just been said has been addressed within the SCoPE at all. So it is completely missing from it. The 50. Oh, sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
I'm just aware of the time, Claire. I don't have to go at the minute, but I don't know how long this recording is. So, whether we've still got people's attention, I hope we will have. So the fifth key concern was the failure to protect the standing of the profession. And I'll just read again what we've put there. So we put in the two CTUK reports, we outline in some detail the attempts to block debate within membership and more broadly about the introduction of SCoPEd. It resulted in SCoPEd being passed on the basis of a membership consultation within 3 professional bodies who drove its adoption, engaging just 13 to 15% of their memberships. That was only NCPS who I think consulted with their members via the vote. The membership vote that they had. The lack of consultation with members of the professional bodies and the subsequent governance issues within the professional bodies are serious and visible both within the profession and more broadly in society, and have profoundly undermined the credibility of our sector. As it stands, SCoPE has deepened existing professional splits and degradation of counselling and psychotherapy. The lack of consultation during its creation has served to further undermine our professional credibility, and it is in this context we urge the professional bodies to engage in an informed debate with their own memberships. So that's a kind of summary of the response that we gave to the PSA, and that's available in full on the CTUK website. Again, I'll put the link below for that.
As you read, I'm just feeling this sort of sense of hopelessness, because people have been saying this essentially for all the years that SCoPEd has been grinding on. And it just feels as if, without any maliciousness on anyone's part, the people who are organising this and who are invested in it are so separate from the rest of the world, really. There's no concept of what real equality, what EDI actually means. And if you are making going further in your career, more and more expensive. How can you not understand that that's going to impact people of colour, poor people, disabled people, any vulnerable group necessarily is very likely to earn less than the white middle class woman that is them. And good luck to the white middle class women. I speak as one. Good luck. But there is an income thing going on there that just doesn't go on in the rest of the world. And it structurally discriminates against all these vulnerable groups, some of whom are protected by law. And if the SCoPEd team, with all their great skill and business acumen, can't get that, I mean, there's something terribly wrong here.
Well, when the advertisement was shared yesterday for the university course, in that advertisement, they had mapped it with the MSc being column A, MPhil being column B, and their doctorate being column C. And what I would assume, and I don't know if I'm assuming this rightly or wrongly, but if it's just under £10,000 a year to train, and it's a year for each of the two, for the MSc and the MPhil, and then it's say 2 years for your doctorate, that's 4 years. So that's just shy of £40,000. It might be a bit more if it's more for the doctorate level training. I don't know, it might be less, but we'll use 40 grand as an average. I would, and I've met a lot of people like me who have already done a diploma or degree and then are doing the MA on top of that, because it's heavily research based. It's different to what you're learning in your kind of clinical skills training. So you've already paid out to do your MA or your degree, and then it's like another 40,000 almost on top of that. I couldn't afford that even part time, and I think what people are not considering is so for a group of people that £40,000 would be 4 years full-time study. If you broke that down part-time, you're looking at 8 to 10 years part-time study, which is a hell of a long time to be studying, especially if you're already qualified as well. And what someone said in the CTUK Facebook group is £40,000 over 10 years seems reasonable. And I was just like, no, it doesn't at all. If you've got, who can do that? Let's just be open about this. What group of people can do that?
Who's got
People
40k
have money,
lying around?
someone to support them, not working, can do that.
Yes.
It's single mums or single dads, whatever. If you've got children to support, you need to work to have an income to look after your family and provide for their needs before you then get the income to do your part-time training. That doesn't even include this 40,000 as well, doesn't include any increased costs that people might have. So that might be resources for your training or traveling to and from it, or childcare costs, or
what do you get out of it?
Status. You get to get in column C, Claire. That's what you get. That's your prize.
But I think I can get into column.
If you're not accredited.
I can get into column C soon if I become senior accredited, I think. So I can do that in a year.
Yeah.
So, this.
But you that thing, I used single parents as an example there, but also, parents who are not single, but also carers, disabled people from groups that we already know are more likely to live in poverty, and that includes larger families on income related benefits, certain ethnic minority groups. It puts barriers up to anybody from any of those groups.
And that it should be clear as day. That should be crystal clear.
What my concern is seeing some of the courses advertised that is saying that level of training will get you onto the SCoPE framework category. That is shutting out all of those groups of people, or a high percentage of people within those groups.
Or it's requiring a massive investment from those groups that is not being asked of other groups.
Yeah. And
this is a juggernaut. It's not going to stop. And when universities go, oh, well, let's just be pragmatic, and they sort of force the issue like this, it's like adding rocket fuel to a bomb.
Yeah.
There's no way on earth this thing is going to be slowed down. And the chaos that is causing already is so destructive.
Yeah, and I think the other perspective as well, you know, we've talked a lot about counsellors and the profession and how it impacts us, but it ultimately impacts clients' choice of therapists
Oh,
as well.
completely. I mean, that's the ultimate thing. Yet again, most clients, not clients that students get their hours from.
Our students are like, well, I was going to say, what is it? Practice on, students can practice on anyone. Nobody
Yes, people, they wouldn't, that if they did that in private practice, they'd be hammered, but they can do it. Anyway, put that to one side. People are only going to be able to see therapists from a certain income group, which necessarily excludes a large majority of people who are not white and middle class. And that's just that the BACP and the others can't see this. It's kind of frightening.
And as a working class person, this is a true story, Claire, right? I have seen about 10 counsellors over the last 20 odd years, right? I worked in depth with one of them, and it was a counsellor, it was a psychotherapist in the NHS, and I had never gelled with any of the therapists who I'd seen, really. I'd done the required hours for my training and then I'd left. I'd never really went that in depth because I hadn't had that click with that therapist and that relationship. Then with the NHS therapist, it was about 6 weeks into the work together, and I was thinking, this is going really well. Like, I really get on with this person. Like, they really, like, they know like what I'm talking about. And it was like this light bulb moment. I just sat there and I just, out of the blue, I just blurted and I just went, "You're working class, aren't you?" And she just went, "Yes, I am." Like, we had a conversation about that, and that's what it was. Like, she understood what it meant to me to be working class and to come from the area that I come from and to grow up on a council estate and to live in poverty and to, you know, but real poverty, not just, you know, you can't go on holiday this year, but, you know, you need to steal food to be able to eat kind of poverty. You know, and she got that. And I could tell she got that in a way that other counsellors hadn't got.
Yes. And if we're talking about the safety of the client and the richness and depth of the therapy, then that has got to be part of the calculation, hasn't it?
Definitely, but there was something else which I said to her it was the end of work, and we worked together for almost 8 years in total. But at the end of that work, one of the things that I said to her, and this might offend some people, but it was that she never, despite what I told her about my background or growing up, showed me any ounce of sympathy or "who are you?" That was never there. If I had felt that, which I had from other counsellors, like the shock, like, "Oh, what happened to you?" Or they said what? Or this, like, and some therapists were like, "Oh, you poor little girl," like, like, it's just this real. If my therapist had done any of that over those 8 years, I would have been out. If that door in a shot, I would have been gone. And I think that was a really big important thing for me, and that was, I think, because she was working class.
She got it. And I think it's worth being clear here, since it seems that we need to be so basic about this. Neither was she doing the cliched thing of withdrawing, of being the blank screen, of saying nothing you say can disturb me. It wasn't that. It was a settled understanding of what you were saying. So it wasn't that she was being shocked, and it wasn't that she was doing that sort of cliche of the analytic withdrawal and punishment. And it wasn't that she had this concept of, well, if only your parents had been employed or worked harder or whatever it was. Mm-mm-mm. She met you where you were because she understood where you were coming from. And I mean, it really is this basic. It's not that people of colour can only work with people of colour, but, you know, they've got to have the choice. There's got to be the option. And it can't just be any old person of colour. It's people of colour who understand the individual where they get. So we need a broad diversity of people from all incomes. I mean, good God, we should be paid for this because, you know, there are people being paid for it who don't get it.
Yeah. It is so basic, really. It really is. Yeah.
Well, there we are, folks. I mean, I don't know. I'm just back to a place of going, oh my God, what next? But I think this has been useful. It's a sort of a summation of what the monkey's uncles is going on.
Yeah.
Should we draw to a close?
Yeah. So if you've got this far in watching the video, thank you for still being here with us. Please do check out the links to the resources that I'm going to put below as well. As always, any feedback, questions, welcome. And Claire and I might meet again at some point in the future and to discuss the development of SCoPEd or the not lack development of SCoPEd. I don't know. Nobody knows where it's going. And we might invite people in and yeah. But that's it.
The aim, I think it's important to say, we can say this all the time, the aim is not to attack anyone. The aim is clarity. And I'm not clear about any of this.
No.
So I'd really welcome being told what the monkeys and cults is going on. So
yeah, and for me, it's not like, you know, a SCoPEd doesn't feel kind of personal at all. You know, I'm retiring from being a therapist now, and it doesn't actually impact me. But that doesn't mean that I don't care about the future of the profession and
of the profession and of the impact on clients.
Yeah, and you know, I have over 10,000 members in CTUK. I would say most of them are in column A, and they're really good therapists. They're really good people.
Well, they should be
and
because they've completed their training. That's got to mean something.
it's really unfair that a lot of those people feel discriminated against. If I can do anything to, you know, make people's voices heard, then I will continue to do that despite SCoPEd not really. Just bonkers, Claire, the whole thing.
It's not SCoPEd. It's the same with regulation and all the other things. It's not the item, it's the way that it is being implemented that is the problem.
Yeah.
So, thank you. I'm no less clear.
Me neither. Bye.
See you soon. Bye. For listening to the Therapist Talk Money podcast. You can find all of our podcasts on the Counsellors Together UK website, www.ukcounsellors.co.uk, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts.